Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in this special and exclusive interview. Our guest today was vocally featured in an all-time classic PlayStation 2 game, Jak II and Jak III. She's also a medical professional. Talk about a jack of all trades, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Autos and Autolettes, welcome Britton Arey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Kind of feeling nostalgic here. I mean, PlayStation 2 video game. Wow, that's a huge honor to have under your belt, you know?
Evidently, unless you're going for a slightly different angle in career choices in your life, in which case, not so much. But yeah,
Speaking
it
of
was certainly an honor.
Speaking of career choices, of all the unique guests that we have, that we had here over the years, you stand out because your background as an MD, medical doctor, that's something that we never had before as a former voice actress as well.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the very few people who insisted that they put my credentials as an MD on the actual, when they're running the credits, like you can actually see the MD, MBA on there, which I thought would be kind of funny since there are probably very few others in there. So yeah, that's one of the Easter eggs. If you stay to watch the credits long enough, you can actually catch that. But yeah, I guess it is a little bit unusual.
That being said, can you explain exactly what you do in the medical field?
Yeah, I'm a doctor of voice acting now. That does not exist. I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm in the mental health profession and went to medical school, did residency in psychiatry, and am now in private practice in Orange County, and I do medication management and psychotherapy for patients with a wide range of different mental health issues. And like you said, probably not a lot of people that have gone in that direction from a voice acting career.
You said you're a psychiatrist. A lot of people tend to confuse that with a psychologist. Can you elaborate on what the difference is?
Yeah, we're all part of the mental health field. In fact, there are quite a few members of like a mental health team or people who are considered mental health professionals. And psychologists are also doctorate level professionals who have a PhD as opposed to an MD. And they are usually people who do psychotherapy or family therapy, or they do testing, whereas an MD like myself can prescribe medication, which is probably the biggest difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is the ability to prescribe meds. And also because of our education, we're taught a lot about the differences between how non-psychiatric conditions, like organic or what we call medical conditions, can manifest with psychiatric symptoms. So part of our job when we see a patient is to what we call rule out that there aren't any medical things that could possibly be causing those symptoms. For example, people who run high on anxiety, oftentimes when we run labs on them, are found to have high levels of thyroid hormone, and hyperthyroidism is a very common cause of anxiety, and conversely, running low on thyroid can cause depression. So it's part of our responsibility as being part of a mental health team, but being on the medical side of things, not only to prescribe medications and monitor those, but also to make sure that we're catching things that can be treated in a very different way than conventional psychotherapy and psychiatry would be treating patients, and that we're catching potential underlying medical issues as well.
Now, out of curiosity, do you focus on one particular part of psychiatry, or is it just in general?
There are people who do specialize. I tend to find all of it fascinating. So I actually have a practice in general adult psychiatry, which means I see everything from ADHD to anxiety to depression to bipolar to schizophrenia, and I do actually adore all of those issues, and I'm very blessed to have a extremely amazing patient load, patients that I get to work with, and I've been working with quite a few of the same patients for over a decade, a lot of whom I do both psychotherapy and medication management for. So it's I feel very privileged to do what I do and have the diversity of issues that I get to deal with, and to be such a part of my patients' lives.
Interesting. Now I'm going to go ahead and take you back to 2003, 2004. Please explain how a medical doctor became a voice in a very popular video game. How did that happen? I mean,
Yeah, I entered a lottery. No, that did not happen either.
those are two different traits. I mean, whoa, how did that combined?
Well, actually, it is kind of an interesting story. From gosh, as far back as I can remember, I really wanted to be an actor. I was really heavily into musical theater, took voice lessons, was in a pilot for a TV show when I was younger.
Do tell.
Yeah, it was, did not get turned into a TV show, but it was an awesome experience, and I'll never forget it. And did paid musical theater at a venue in Orange County over a summer, which, again, was incredible. And my range has always been, I'm on the smaller side, which it's so funny when patients now meet me, and we have on our website, we have little headshots of us. And people always come in and they go, wow, you look so much taller on the website. And I'm thinking, how can you assess height from like the neck up on a picture? But evidently I look way taller from my headshot than I do in real life. But yeah, I'm on the smaller side, and so I've always played younger parts, which meant that I had a little bit more maturity, but the range to kind of go a little bit younger. So when I was in high school, I would be going out for parts that were 5-6 years younger than I was, and I would be getting them, and it was really fun for me to kind of play the younger kid or the younger actor. So that was kind of where I developed my skill set, and then tried to keep the rest of dancing and the vocal training also intact. And when I actually did not graduate high school, and I did not graduate from college. In fact, the only degrees I have are a medical degree and master's of business. So what happened was I was in high school, and I was in my junior year and had taken the PSAT, and based on that was contacted and kind of recruited by USC, and based on my GPA was given the opportunity to do my freshman year of college and my senior year of high school in the same year at USC. So I didn't have to continue in high school. I was allowed to start college at the age of 16. So I left high school, went to college at 16, and had an amazing experience there. Right before then, I was also heavily pursuing acting and had gotten an agent in LA and was starting to be sent on a lot of calls, including one in particular. I remember I was sent on it wasn't really a cattle call, it was a really wheedled down version of a call that took me to the set of Hook, which was being filmed by Steven Spielberg, and Robin Williams was in it as well.
Wow. The side note, Hook also featured voice actor Dante Bosco, who is, in case you guys don't know, he is the voice of Zuko in the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender. So if you would have been in that movie, that would have been two voice actors that I know of that would have been in Hook.
There you go, and it sounds like he went on to have a great career in that field, and I, on the other hand, did not, and was also not in that movie, so there could have been a correlation there. But I remember distinctly going in super excited for that audition, and really prepared, feeling really good, and up until then, most of the things I had auditioned for, I had gotten, and I felt super fortunate. But that was the first time I went into audition, and they were taking girls, I think, 10 at a time, and they put us in, I think, one of the big sound studios, and they had us line up, and all they wanted us to do was close our eyes, and that was the entire audition. And then they dismissed us and let us go. I'm like, wow, that was the weirdest audition I've ever been a part of, and I can't imagine them making a good decision based on just seeing us with our eyes closed. And it turns out it was for the young Wendy, for a dream sequence that she's doing, and so they wanted somebody who look matched the person they had already cast as the older Wendy, which totally makes sense to me. But for me, that whole process, I think, reinforced that it was going to be a very long haul, trying to pursue a career in Hollywood and acting and in musical theater. And it also really drove home the idea that it didn't matter as much how much I prepared or how talented I was. There were certain X factors that were always going to be in play in that field. And for me, that was really hard to wrap my head around. It didn't matter if I could have been, or I'm sure I wasn't, but I could have been one of the more talented kids in that bunch. And it was, they were going for a look. And to me, the idea of pursuing a career that wasn't necessarily proportional to the energy and the talent that I was able to put into it was really disappointing. It was frustrating, and I don't think my personality was as suited to that kind of career. And then understanding that rejection is a very large part of that, and you have to be very resilient to that type of feedback and not getting the parts. And for me, again, my personality is not well suited to a lot of that, and so at the age of 16, I had to decide whether I was going to major at USC in acting or in theater, or if I was going to pursue something totally different. And at that point, made a decision that I wanted to do something in which my efforts would be directly proportional to the outcome, and ended up choosing biology with a majored in biology and minored in psychology, and found that the more effort I put in, I was able to maintain a 4.0 GPA. After 3 years, I decided to go ahead and apply to med school, and didn't have a bachelor's. Despite that, I ended up getting into 3 med schools after my junior year. So at 19, I left USC and started med school.
I see you have it made though, because you have your own little clinic going, your own little business though, right?
I do. I was really fortunate, and this kind of plays into the Jak and Daxter story a little bit. So went through all 4 years of medical school, graduated, got my internship at my first choice, which was Cedars-Sinai. It was a very small program, very psychoanalytically focused. I knew I wanted to do a lot of therapy, and a lot of programs were swinging very heavily biological, and I like people. I like to talk to people. So I wanted a program that was going to train me on how to dive deep into people's issues and to help them in other ways than just throwing medication at them. After my first year there, however, I realized they were highly under-resourced. At the end of my first year of internship and residency, 3 out of 4 of the residents in my year left, and I was one of them.
Oh. Okay.
So I kind of had an existential crisis, right? What was I going to do? Like I said, I wasn't really cut out for much else. I didn't have any other degrees that would support me to do much else. I had a huge passion for medicine, but was incredibly burnt out from my experiences at Cedars, which were great, but very overwhelming and very intensive, and involved a lot of overnight shifts, which will kill anybody after a solid year. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. So I ended up taking some time off, and right as I was making that decision, I met my future husband. I, again, was kind of in the middle of my existential crisis, so was not really looking back at acting, especially because I'd been out of the business for so long. I didn't think there was a huge opportunity for me there, and really did want to stay kind of in the medical field, so hadn't really thought too much about it. My husband, and it sounds like total nepotism, it actually was and was not, was and he's been the creative. My husband is Dan Arey, who was involved in Crash Bandicoot. He's been in video games for, God, I think since video games were invented, back at Crystal Dynamics and IDEO, or is it 3DO? I don't remember. And then with Naughty Dog goes way back with them, and was the creative director for the Jak and Daxter series. So
alongside Andy Gavin? director of the series. I think he was Andy Gavin as well. I don't know if you.
No, Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin were the co-founders of Naughty Dog. So, no, but Dan was the creative director. So he was the one who wrote the scripts and told the programmers what to program and the artists what to draw, and then actually went into the sound studio and recorded and directed all the voice actors. And
Oh,
I
okay.
remember
So he was a voice director as well.
Oh yeah, he did. He loved to be hands-on with all of that stuff, and he actually is outstanding in it. So not only does he write I mean, he comes up with the plot and the story for the original game, and for all the cutscenes, which, as you know, could be put into a mini movie by themselves.
Right. Yeah. So your husband is responsible for the entire storyline behind Jak and Daxter.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think there's a team that works with him, and I'm sure there's a lot of the editing process, but the creative core
Wow.
is really his. That's his bailiwick. He's been the creative guy
Right.
at most of his companies, and so that's that really is. And he's outstanding at it.
Yes. I mean, wow. I mean, I have some questions for him too.
I'm sure he'd make a much more interesting interview for you than I would, quite honestly, just because they did a story on him actually recently, where they profiled his entire career from when people were getting into video games when it was like the heyday where nobody knew anything about video games. If you said you were going into video games as a career, people laughed at you and said you were kind of a flake. And so my husband, I always say, is the least educated but most brilliant man I've ever met, right? He's got a degree in communications from Sacramento State, but he is the most well-read, one of the most highly respected people in his industry, and he literally, I mean, I cannot understate this, and again, I guess I'm biased a little bit since I married him, but I really do believe he's a creative genius, and despite a doctorate degree and a master's in business, he can go toe to toe and probably outthink me, at least out creative me any day of the week.
I mean, I have to agree with you. I mean, his story. I am pretty sure he was also the creative director with Crash Bandicoot. But as far as Jak and Daxter goes, the dynamic of the story. I mean, it's. You would think that a story a video game like Jak and Daxter would be just for kids, and don't get me wrong, it is. But the story is it's so a mixture of adventure, action, comedy, and all that stuff mixed into one storyline and one game, and then you have the other game that's an addendum to the second game and extends off, and the story just left me. I think that's one of the things that impacted me as a kid playing the game. The story was the thing that really, really impacted me because at the time I had not seen a game that had it felt like I was playing a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and that was left me in awe. It left me wanting more. And so when for those who don't know yet or haven't followed up Jak and Daxter, when Jak and Daxter got I believe the rights got sold off to another game called Impact Games or something like that. When they did The Lost Frontier, which is the most recent game in the series, I didn't feel the story was the same. I'm not sure if your husband was part of that game, the last one, The Lost Frontier.
Nope.
Okay, so yeah, I noticed right off the bat. I mean, after the first few levels, I noticed a huge difference in the story. And see, that's when you got a great creative director. When somebody notices a huge difference between a game right off the bat. Just like a movie, it's like they change an actress, they change the director. It's like, hey, this is not my movie anymore. What happened? Where's that one guy?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great insight on your part that you could even tell the emotional tone of it was different from the beginning and the way they told the story. And to be honest, Dan's mantra, which is not fix it in post, well, actually it is, but his other mantra is the story matters. His whole goal was to make story relevant in gameplay, and I think that's been his mission, is to make story in gaming matter and to give credit to the people who, if you look at a film, you're often who the directors are, and yet in video games it's a multi-billion-dollar industry in which we could name off some of the biggest creative directors and directors of all time, and nobody would know who these people are. So that's been kind of the other kind of less important mission, was to give credit to some of these people who are brilliant and have impacted the lives, like you said, as a kid. And I keep hearing that people who played this game and been impacted and remember the story and felt the tone of it, and felt sucked into the drama of the characters. And a lot of that came from his vision of making story not secondary to gameplay, but as important. Because, of course, in gaming, you can't really make gameplay secondary, but you can certainly make the story matter.
Right.
And that's what he set out to do.
And he did a really good job at it. I mean, it's not every day that a game impacts you the way Jak and Daxter did. I mean, any game such as like Grand Theft Auto, you can play. It's a good line. It's a good action adventure story, game, but it doesn't give that same. How can I say that same impactful meaning?
Well put. Yes, and that's awesome to hear. That even as somebody who didn't really know the mission overtly, that you felt it, and that you understand that there's a difference between playing a game to play a game and playing a game that you care about what's going to happen, and you care about the characters, and the storyline and the gameplay are intimately intertwined. And not a lot of people know this, but Dan was, and I was on the recipient end of this, Dan talking for years about wanting to do a story about Sir Francis Drake. So Dan is a huge history buff, and he reads incessantly, and he gets these ideas, and then he gets kind of latched onto them. And for years and years, he was talking about, I want to do a game around, like, Sir Francis Drake and the mystery and what happened to him, and I want to make it somewhat realistic because there is a mystery surrounding him. And so he had all these notes and and he was the original impetus and the original story founder for Uncharted.
Oh, yeah. That's another game that really has a good storyline, Uncharted, and it just goes on like it could be a movie.
I think they're making it a movie right now.
I believe so. Yes, I think there's talks about it, or it's in production. I just hope that if they do make it, they make it good.
Yeah, minor detail, right?
Exactly. I mean, in the past few years with Pokemon and the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, both which are based on video games, they've done an extraordinary job on those, and let's hope they keep doing that and listening to fans and not making it seem like, let's make it the way we think they like it,
Right. No,
Right.
They got to stay true to what made the game so special. And Dan was only involved in the very first story, the Drake, the Uncharted, and not the subsequent ones. He had moved on in his career after that. But it's interesting you mentioned Pokemon, because that's currently where he is and what he's working on, which is he's I don't know what his official title is, but essentially a creative director for Pokemon Go.
Oh, the mobile game?
The mobile game, yeah.
Wow, with that, he's working with what's that company, Niantic?
Niantic,
yes.
Niantic. So he's had they were first with Google,
Right, yes.
and then moved out to become their own corporation outside of Google, and are doing incredibly well. But he's the main creative lead for Pokemon Go.
Wow, that I did not know, and a lot of people probably don't know that. That's pretty awesome. I wish him luck in that company. Hopefully he makes a good storyline as well for Pokemon Go and see where.
Yeah, it's been a little more challenging. That mission
Right.
evolved a little bit from story to getting people out.
Right.
I
mean, yeah, it's a totally different platform. I mean, rather than a console, you're dealing with mobile game. You have to be mobile around.
Exactly.
But let's go back a little bit to you, and so
Which, by the way, you want to know why the other Jak and Daxter games didn't have the same tenor? It's because they didn't have Tess, right? Tess
There
was
you
totally
go.
missing from
That's
the other games, so that's probably why you didn't like them as much.
but Tess was in Jak X Combat Racing, wasn't she?
I don't think Tess was in Jak X.
She was just in Jak 3, and then after that, it's like, where she goes, she's gone.
I think Jak II and Jak 3, and I don't think she was in Jak X, unless my memory is completely failing me.
That would make both of us, because I don't remember neither. You know what? The fans will answer that question in the comment section below. They will say that. No, she wasn't. Yes, she
They'll
was.
remind me whether or not I did a game. That would be awesome.
So yeah, so like I was saying, let's go bring it back to you. And so your husband, he helped you get the part of Tess. Is that it?
Yes. So yes and no. So Dan was in the studios a lot, and then he'd come home and he'd have a script written out, and I would help him. So he'd say, "Can you read this part for me?" And of course, it was a part that it might be a male part, or it might be read Jak and help me understand if the dialogue makes sense, or if the dialogue sounds natural. And so I would read with him. And, he would ask me to, we just kind of rip off different stuff. I didn't really give him any notes. I just read the part that he wanted me to. And he handed me a sequence, and I don't remember if it was for Tess or for somebody else. And I read it, and he was like, "Wow, you can really get into character." He said, he said, "Why don't I bring home a script that I've written for a character named Tess and see if you can do that same voice, and let me just hear what you sound like." And he brought a script home, and I read it, and he was like, "That is exactly what I was imagining in my head." And he's like, "But they're not just going to let you walk into a recording studio." He's like, "You're going to have to do a blind audition where I have to tape you and then send it up the ranks," which for him were just the owners, right, of the company that he reported to, and they're going to have to make a decision about whether they like the sound of your voice enough to let you actually play this part. I'm like, wow, that would be super cool. I really miss acting. I miss doing that. I would love to do voice acting, but I understand you can't just tap me to be Tess. And so he recorded me doing it and played it for his bosses. And I can't remember if they had other voices that they had also recorded as well, but his boss said, "Yeah, that sounds great. Absolutely, bring her in, let her do it." And so that was kind of how it happened. Dan, again, does such a good job, both in the recording studio as well as offline, giving you the backstory of your character, so you have a chance to really understand your character's mood. Why is she saying what she's saying? What does she know that that the other characters don't know? What happened right before she got into this particular scene that could be influencing her emotional tone when she's speaking. And so all that is super helpful. So Dan, really does a great job and did. I spent a lot of time on my own trying to channel Tess as best as I could. And what they do usually is they show the voice actors a picture of their characters, so they have a sense of the person that they're acting. But you don't really get to see it animated. You don't really get to see the whole thing come to life. You're often not in the same sound stage or sound studio as your other fellow actors. So you're reading cold, and then usually the response, or if it's a dialogue, is read back to you by Dan, trying to at least engage with you, but it's usually not with your fellow actors, which would be so much more helpful. Dwayne Johnson said this when he did Moana, The Rock. Said voice acting he thought was one of the highest forms of art, because you don't have that in-person, you don't have props, you're not in a costume, you don't have makeup, you don't have a set, you don't have other people you're playing off of. It's you in a soundstage by yourself trying to channel all of those pieces for yourself and get into character. And in reflection, I think he was right. I think voice acting is kind of a heightened art form, and it doesn't get enough credit for how hard it is. And Max Casella, who voiced Daxter, was amazing, especially trying to play this little marsupial character who, right. He's an awesome actor in his own right, but the voice acting he did, I thought, was superb.
There's that connection between Tess and Daxter, that romance going on. And I was wondering if you two got together and played off each other lines and whatnot.
See, I think that would be a really good way to do it. Unfortunately, his schedule doesn't always permit him to be on set, whereas I had a lot more flexibility in my time. So, unfortunately, we didn't actually end up in the same room at the same time.
Recording separately, then?
Yeah, we recorded separately. Sometimes they'd have bits of him speaking that I was able to
Play
at
off.
least hear and kind of play off of in terms of the character. But we were never, like, it was never a dialogue moment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you two were recording in two different states, right? He was in New York, you were in Los Angeles?
Yes, that's exactly right.
There
Yeah,
you go.
Dan was directing him from New York.
So with that being said, you recorded separately than the other actors and whatnot, which is like anime dubbing. For those of you who know, we interview a lot of anime voice actors, and a lot of things. The most common thing they tell us is that they record separately because it's a dubbing, and it's not like an original video audio where you get to record with the group or the other actors and whatnot. But in this instance, you said that you were also recording separately. But did you get to improvise some of your lines that were not in the script?
Yeah, sometimes, they would, or Dan would say, try reacting to something, or we want to hear you laugh, or we want to hear you act surprised, or we want to hear you, do this. And so a lot of and I'm pretty sure he did that with a lot of the different actors. He wanted them to have a more authentic reaction to things. And so he would, put them through different mental scenarios and be like, okay, react to that. So some of the stuff is improv, although, it's mixed in with a lot of the scripted stuff.
While recording for the game, do you recall any funny moments or some funny moment that happened in the audio booth?
I'm trying to think. Gosh, I was so nervous because I was not the typical voice actor, right? So I went in and I was so focused on making sure that I did my lines correctly, that I received feedback, that I was, and that I didn't want anybody to kind of say outright, wow, that doesn't sound like a real voice actor. To me, it was, I had such intensity in what I was doing and wanted to make sure that I didn't blow it, especially for Dan, who was kind of vouching for me. But I do remember, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when you go to or at least when you did go to a sound studio to record, these places are awesome. And it's kind of similar to, and I didn't know this until I had met Dan, going to a video game company, right? You imagine what these places look like, but you can never fully imagine it until you're there. Like when you see all the toys that are on people's desks and all the Star Wars figurines, or the mounds of empty Diet Coke cans that are piled up in the corner, or the ping pong tables, or it's just such, it's really, it was cool, and it was, and to see all the artwork that's been put up by the artists that are still rendering things, and such a creative, unusual, high energy, just really awesome space. And then going into a sound studio, I really didn't know what to expect. But because they deal with a lot of that same energy and that same creativity, it was a very kind of open space, and they had this huge area that was all about like different food types. You could go in there, get any candy, any cereal, any snack at any time, and it was enormous. I've never seen so much food in my life, and I guess people did long voice recording sessions. I wasn't one of them, but I had never seen, that wasn't my idea of what a sound studio would be like, this kind of mini game space with this enormous cache of snacks for people, which I thought was kind of cool, but surprising. So that was my big takeaway. And every time we'd go in, I'd be like, so do they have the Oreo cookies this time, or like, what are we gonna get? Dan was like, okay, let's focus on what we're doing.
Have you actually played the game yourself?
I have not. I'm not a huge gamer. To be quite honest, I've seen the game, like we've run through all the cutscenes, which were kind of the part that I was most interested in, and still am. When Dan is looking at video games, I kind of want to go through the cutscenes and understand the story. But I actually can't operate the controls on a PlayStation, so my son is much better at that than I am. So he'll have to teach me someday.
There's a feature in the game, Jak and Daxter 3 and 2, called the Model Viewer. It allows players to view the character at will. During this part of the game, there's a line that you say referencing the writer. Is this a reference to your husband?
I really, totally love the writer on this project. He is hot, too.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that I honestly don't even remember saying that, but I'm quite sure that Dan put that in there.
But you're saying the line.
If it's me, then I. Oh my gosh, that must have been one of our outtakes.
Probably because it hears this is an out of character in your voice, but out of character. Like the characters are speaking as if they were casting people on a movie. You know,
Oh, that's so funny.
I don't know if you were aware of that. The game had that feature where you
No,
can, yeah,
I
you can view, and this is for every character. And every character, every time you view the character, the voice actor for that character would speak in a breaking the fourth wall. So there's
yeah, right.
Max, there's what's it, was it Josh who voiced Jack?
Yeah.
There was you, and I don't know if that was made on purpose, or maybe they brought that out of I don't know if those were outtakes and they decided to put those as sort of like actor kind of thing.
Yeah, that was not scripted. I can tell you that much. But I do know that they, sometimes would, say let's do some outtake moments and just say whatever comes into your mind, or let's get, they'd be doing like let's do a sound check, let's see, how Tess is coming out.
Right.
And so I'm fairly certain a lot of those came from outtakes and just the actors goofing off and saying funky things. And I'm sure that was one of the funky things that came to my head at that moment that I thought would never be used.
Unfortunately, so this question you probably already answered it, but just to recap, there are currently 6 games out there, Jak and Daxter. Do you know if Naughty Dog is working on a 6th installation of this series?
I don't, honestly, just because we're not, Dan isn't involved in Naughty Dog anymore, so I'm not aware of what they are working on. I know that they were continuing with the Uncharted series and I think they're involved in the movie for that as well, but that I honestly can't tell you whether or not they're involved in any more Jak and Daxter.
With that being said, do you know why they are not involved in Jak and Daxter anymore? Why they sold off this series to Impact Games?
I don't. Honestly, I feel like, again, this is going way back in time, and Dan would be a better person to probably answer that question, but my recollection was, and again, this is me being kind of a little bit of an outsider in the industry, but they were, video game companies tended to do things in threes, like Jak 1, 2, and 3, and then, Jak X, or they'd do Crash 1, 2, and 3, and then Crash Team Racing, right? So there was a little bit of a formula for that, and then I think I don't know if they thought people would tire of it, or they were tired of the IP, and then I remember, because I remember this transition that they were working on new ideas and pitching, and that's when Dan pitched the idea for the Sir Francis Drake story that became Uncharted, and I think they were looking for a new IP at that point. So I don't think the plan had been to do any more Jak and Daxter. So I don't know if that's correct, or if that led to, if they had a sale in place and we're just looking for what the next thing would be, but I do know that it felt like it was a natural transition to go from the last one they worked on to Uncharted.
Which is a shame because, of course, there's a lot of people who are wanting to have Jak and Daxter, the series, come back. And I'm not sure where it went, if they wanted to come back. As much as I don't know who has the rights now, if there's ever going to be a game, and if there is it going to be as good as the first trilogy? I mean, hopefully, if it does come back, or if it does come out from wherever it's hiding from, hopefully your husband, yourself, and all the other voice actors come back.
Yeah, that's the hard part is people change around in this industry. And I know Naughty Dog has been through, there are quite a few people who were there when Dan was there who are at different places now, and the current head of Naughty Dog was there back when my husband was there, and is great at what he does, Evan Wells. And
Okay.
but putting the original members behind the creative direction and the voice acting, and all of that, all those pieces that made the first three so special, putting all of that back together would be really difficult, I think. But to your point, hopefully they'd find another studio or another team that would be able to recreate kind of that magic, and I guess that's possible.
Here's an idea: bring Jak and Daxter back as a movie, live action. Just saying, just throwing that out there, with featuring, Britton.
Tess. Featuring
Tess.
Tess, who now becomes a main character. In fact, we can just call it Tess and Daxter, which I think would not be a bad idea, right? Since that was
A spin-off.
just to throw it out there, right? Since we're spitballing, I don't think that would be a bad idea.
Tess and Daxter, an all-new adventure story by Naughty Dog. Now that's an idea, right there.
I kept pitching it the whole time I was there. I was like, we need to make Tess more of a central character. And
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because there is an out-of-take line, again, going back to that model viewer, a character model viewer, that you say that you are the star of the show and that you should have gotten more screen time.
You should have written me a bigger part. I mean, hello? I'm like a big up-and-coming star. Get a clue?
Yeah. You know what? That does sound like me.
I'm going to put all this, like the lines and that, all that in post-production so you can see it as well. And it's going to be so funny. It's going to be so cool.
I didn't realize all those outtakes made it. That's so funny.
And the fans are thinking that those are not outtakes, that those are actual scripted things that they had you say out of character.
No!
Even myself, up to now, I've always thought that was something that, okay, now we're going to do breaking the fourth wall kind of thing, making the characters in this game seem like actors rather than characters. I always thought that was on purpose, that was done.
No.
Or at least improv,
It was all, at least for my part, but I'm pretty sure Dan, when he wrote, never broke the fourth wall. So all the scripted stuff would have been in character.
Well, I mean,
dialogue.
there's that part where Jak did break the fourth wall in Jak III, where there's a line, it wasn't your line, but there's a line that says, one of the characters says, "This is not a game," and Jak turns to the camera, ironically, kind of saying, well, you're kind of playing a game. "This isn't a game."
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now going back to...
that sounds like something he would do, but for the most part, unless it's a gag like that, those kinds of, which that's not an outtake, obviously, that was a
Right.
scripted moment. But those breaking the fourth wall outtakes, breaking the fourth wall moments, I'm fairly certain were outtakes. I know they were for me, so I can't imagine they were for the other characters as well. I wonder if they know. They're all out there too.
Well, now, this is an exclusive interview. Correct me if I'm wrong, but have you ever done an interview before?
I've done interviews usually about mental health topics, not about my career as a voice actor.
So
which
this
was
is the
pretty
first.
short-lived.
This is the first interview that you had about your voice acting career and about
It
Jak.
is.
Oh wow, we
It
have
is.
an
I'm honored.
exclusive here.
What's that? It is an exclusive. Yeah, the one and only.
Fantastic, awesome. So going back to bringing Jak and Daxter back, would you be willing to portray Tess again if it does come back?
Of course. Absolutely. Tess has always been like a part of me and has a part of my heart, and I adored her, and I think she, that character, I really think was a great asset to the game, and I love the storyline with her and Daxter. And
Yes, everyone loves the
be-
storyline.
It would be awesome to bring her back, and it would be a huge honor to play her again.
Of course, if she does come back, she'll be in a four-legged creature and Ocelette, just like Daxter.
Don't worry, honey. You get used to it.
That's right.
Just in case you forgot,
That's right. Unless we can turn them both into humans, which would be, I think, probably the whole thrust of the full-length feature that you and I are now building together.
Hey, there we go. Hey, we're on to something here, Hollywood. No steals. We're gonna go copyright this right now.
You should. because I want
have
those.
Dan write it or edit it, and then we all just kind of pitch in ideas in there, and we just come up with something.
Tess and Daxter, the movement from marsupial back to human. Because seriously, I want the buxom blonde back. That's such a better thing when people find out that was me. I can say, yeah, I was the buxom blonde in love with the furry little guy. But it's much harder to say I was, the furry little creature in love with the other furry little creature.
But hey, if it does come back, who doesn't love girls and guns, right? And Daxter. Bring
girls and guns much better than marsupials and guns. Yes.
I mean, Tess, Kira, and Ashlyn have both been part of like a sort of the pinup girls of Jak and Daxter.
Uh-huh.
So, the fandom, the boys in the fandom go crazy when they mention one of the three, either Ashley, Kira, or, your character, Tess. And I'm speaking, of course, of the other characters in the game, the other female characters.
Yeah.
Which brings me to another question that is not on my question list, but I just thought of. What are your thoughts on having a character such as Tess and Ashlyn and Kira portrayed as the sort of the sexual kind of enticing thing for the game? I mean,
that's a really interesting question, and I think as somebody who kind of understands the industry, I know what they're going for, and they're going for what sells, and obviously, like you said, girls and guns, right? And especially with big cleavage, so that really works. As a mom and as somebody in the mental health field who deals with body image issues,
a new perspective. There we go.
It has. It really, brings up kind of a little bit of a dilemma, and not that I think that people with body image issues are necessarily playing all these games, but there's certainly enough, because it is the standard in gaming and in Hollywood. I think it's, and I think that slowly that's shifting, but I do think it puts a fine point on, in this game, there is a one type of kind of femme fatale, right, character.
Trio, I would say.
Yeah, the pinup, and it's interesting to ponder that from a, I wonder if there was an opportunity to make changes, and I think people are starting to do that now. We're starting to recognize the importance of putting more publicity on different body types, and more successful people in different industries are being recognized that aren't pinups, that have amazing talents, but not necessarily the 32, 24, 32, kind of Marilyn Monroe body.
The Betty Page of the...
Yeah, right, which is kind of a new paradigm shift, and I wonder if that will hit the video game world, and if so, how.
Well, I mean, let's be realistic. Tess as an Otso isn't really somebody's body goal.
And you may want to shave some parts.
Yeah, that's true. Although you never know.
Exactly, you never know, but still.
You know what? There's so many different. If I've learned anything in my career now as a psychiatrist, there are lots of people with lots of different goals.
You'd be surprised, yeah. Maybe somebody out there's, Tess as an Otso, body goals. Hashtag I want to do that,
You'd be surprised. There are communities out there.
I know for sure. Tess hashtag girlfriend goals. That's the thing.
Really?
And the fandom, you'd be surprised, the fanboys out there. I mean,
that's
just gonna throw that out there.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I'm glad that she's survived this long and had a kind of a
following,
a fan club and a following. That's great. But I bet you the marsupial has a much less following as a girlfriend. But also, just to as a tidbit for your listeners, Ashlyn, when Dan and I were dating, I said, you really do, if we're going to get serious, you need to name a character after me. And he's like, well, it would be pretty obvious if, I named one of my characters Britton. And I'm like, well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. So, of course, he came back with not Ashley, which is my middle name, and our daughter's name, but Ashlyn. Yeah, it's just meant to be a riff on, he tried to sneak it into the game. Without being, since my middle name is Ashley, that would be too obvious. But right. Ashlyn was meant to be kind of a way of getting
more of you in the game.
more of me, which was really sweet if you think
Oh,
about
that's pretty
it.
cool, because now this, people are going to hear it. Now this is going to go on the Wikipedia part of the Jak and Daxter official.
Great.
So that's going to go in there. Ashlyn, did you know?
More in my little pitiful IMDb profile.
Right, in the did you know part,
Did you know,
has her
exactly.
middle name featured as Ashlyn in the video game Jak and Daxter.
There you go. See, you heard it here first. Exclusive, right? Because I bet you nobody knows that, and I probably wasn't even supposed to tell you that. But
Well,
there you go.
I was reading up on the Wikipedia of Jak and Daxter, and they don't even know that Dan was your husband. They just said this could be a reference. The line that you said that you were in love with the writer out of character. This could be a reference to Dan Arey, the writer of Jak and Daxter, unverified.
Nobody ever bothered to follow through to what my last name ended up being.
Well, I did, which is why I wasn't that surprised. I just wanted to confirm. I just, but I was surprised. So when I found out, I'm like, oh my God, writer, creative director. Oh my God, I was putting two and two together, and I was like, could it be, or they just coincidentally have the same name?
Yeah, coincidentally, I ended
Yeah,
up.
but then I noticed that on the credits, your last name is Hill, and then on the other credits, your last name is Arey. So I'm like, huh.
Something changed.
Something changed there. What happened?
Well, they do say in Hollywood you have to sleep your weight. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I was Hill up until 2004, and then we got married. So.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. We're going on our 16th anniversary. Yeah. So clearly it wasn't all for the fame and fortune that Tess provided, which was none.
Well, I wish you the best luck, both of you. If it's
you.
not Jak and Daxter, I hope you guys work on another video game together, whether it's Tess, whether you do a totally different character. Hopefully you'll be willing to do another character in some other video game, if Dan, vouches
Writes
for
me
you.
into one, or if somebody else recognizes the brilliance of Tess and cold calls me, yes, I would be more than willing to do that.
Who knows? Maybe a casting director or a longtime fan is out there just wondering, hey, who is Tess? I need her. Where is she?
Exactly. Why can't I find her anymore? I can't find her.
She's, I found this psychiatrist, but I don't think that's her. It's a psychiatrist.
I get that a lot, actually, in reverse. I get people looking for a psychiatrist, and they find Tess first. And they're very confused. It's like, okay, well, clearly this person can't be, shrink if they're voicing this character. So I get a lot of questions about that. But the other way around.
What's going to that that part? A lot of fans have sent me questions because they know I'm interviewing you today. They send me questions about what has been the most. Who has, of all the characters you voiced, who's been your favorite? So they don't know that you don't have an extensive career or character list. They don't know that the only character that you voiced is Tess on this game, and so they kind of like think you have this huge extensive voice acting career.
That's great. I love that they think that. I'm totally honored that they think that. But of all the characters I've voiced, I can honestly say Tess is my favorite. But I have done, in my career, I've played everything from Veruca Salt to Amaryllis, and which you probably don't know, in The Music Man. And Veruca Salt was from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. From doing a pilot for a TV show, I've done a lot of really fun things, but Tess was definitely a highlight for me.
So before we go, can you provide us with the beloved voice of Tess? Now,
I will do my best. Okay, so
whenever you're ready.
Here.
All right, you guys, ready?
Let me try to channel Tess back from that time.
Oh, I like this. This is gonna be fun.
You had to give me a really long one too.
Yeah, still, you guys,
really
during the beginning of the interview, I emailed her a line from the game, and it's two lines, actually, and that is the line where Tess is explaining the gun and the features. I think you guys know which one it is.
It sports a multi-port, large-bore, gyro-burst launcher with blowback breach assist, using full-jacket, eco-depleted, armor-piercing slugs, and a continuous kill zone scanner for tight grippings at a high cycle rate of fire. It's a hobby.
So she has quite a challenge right now. See if she can pull it off. She's really talented, though.
We shall see. Okay, so take one, yeah?
All right, allons-y.
Okay. Yeah, I just finished this new gun. It sports a multi-port, large-bore gyro-burst launcher with blowback breach assist using full jacket, eco-depleted, armor-piercing slugs, and a continuous kill zone scanner for tight groupings at a high cycle rate of fire. It's a hobby.
There we go. Woo!
Do you want to try it again?
You want to go again?
Was that good?
What? Do you want to do it faster?
No, was it faster in the original?
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure if they sped up your voice or if you just said, "Yeah, I just finished this gun. It's sports a new multi-pipe dodge board, guy board launcher with stuff like that."
Yeah, I think he kept telling me to go faster, and I speak pretty fast, so I think he kept telling me to do it faster and faster, if I remember correctly.
All right,
we can go faster.
Take two, guys.
Okay. Yeah, I just finished this new gun. It sports a multi-port large bore gyro-burst launcher with blowback breach assist using full jacket, eco-depleted, armor-piercing slugs, and a continuous kill zone scanner for tight groupings at a high cycle rate of fire. It's a hobby.
Yes, I think that was exactly how she said it. Exactly the speed rate.
Okay.
Now,
the one I get asked for most when people find out I'm Tess is the "Oh, Daxter, you're amazing" line. That was the one I thought you were going to ask me for.
I wanted to make it a challenge.
You did. You definitely did. That one would have been, I could do it in my sleep. This one was...
This is like, bro, what the hell?
Yeah. I remember doing this one over and over and over again. And it's so funny that you brought this one back because now it's triggering my memories of having to do this over and over again. Because Dan wanted the effects to come out, but me to do it as quickly as I could because this is supposed to be my wheelhouse. So, but also I'm flirting with Daxter at the same time. So, yeah, now I remember why we did this one a lot.
Right, I could imagine. Yeah, I mean, so many outtakes and so many takes. I mean, this is I can't even do it at that fast rate. I mean, let me try. Go
for it.
All right, so. Yeah, I just finished this new gun. It sports a new large bore gyro buster launcher with. I already effed up. Okay, one more time. Okay.
Take two?
Take two.
Not as easy as it looks, is it?
All right. Yeah, I just finished this new gun. It sports a multi-port large bore gyro buster launcher with blowback breach assist using full jacket, eagle depleted, armor pleasing slugs, and a continuous kill zone cannon for tight groupings at a high stake. Okay.
You were so good. You almost got there.
I almost did it, but alas, I did not.
You should just stick to the "Oh, Daxter, you're amazing."
How many times have you done that?
More times than this one, let me tell you.
Your patients know that you've done tests in Jak and Daxter.
Not all of them, no. Just a few who've looked it up themselves online. If it's relevant to what we're doing, if I need to self-disclose, if a patient is really into video games and I think it's an important opportunity to connect, I might share it, but it's actually very few patients know that I've done this.
Wow, I'm pretty sure they'd be really surprised that their therapist. Remind me again.
We did the tutorial earlier, but
I'm like therapist, psychiatrist.
Even in our field, it's hard for people to keep it straight.
Psychiatrist, thank you. So I would imagine it'd be surprising that my psychiatrist would be the voice of Tess in Jak and Daxter.
Some people might be really, really happy. Some people might be really mortified. It really depends on the clientele.
Oh, I'm sure the fanboys would be okay with it.
Yeah, I'm sure. If I start getting a line of the fan club outside of my office, I'll know why.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, your background as an MD, medical doctor, has been quite interesting, actually. I've never had a voice actor who has another field in another career, especially in the medical field.
That's great. I'm super honored to have gotten this chance, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me, and it was really neat to get to relive the glory days of Tess, and again, when we're ready to make the full-length feature film, Tess and Daxter, you and I are on point.
Tess and Daxter, directed by James Cameron. Because you know James Cameron would get everything right. He's into that sci-fi thing. He'd get it right. M. Night. I was gonna say M. Night Shyamalan, but I think M. Night Shyamalan would just make the whole thing confusing and just make me.
Daxter would never have been real.
Right? It was all in your head.
I know. Poor Jack. Poor Tess.
Oh my God, we are really on a roll here with ideas. I mean, I'm liking this. I like this. Let's keep it going.
See what can happen when you hook up with a psychiatrist? A lot of really good ideas come out there. You know?
I like that. I like you.
That's awesome. Well, if you ever do want to speak to Dan, I'm sure he'd make him much more fascinating. I mean, I have such a limited repertoire in terms of what I can bring from the voice acting perspective, but I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about his involvement in Jak and Daxter, or his involvement in all the games that he's ever been a part of. He's not, I mean, he's so, like, he's not arrogant, he's not narcissistic at all. In fact, if anybody, he downplays his successes, so I usually have to kind of brag for him. But he's a really neat guy and very smart, and would give a great interview. So if you'd ever want to talk to him, I'd be happy to help facilitate an introduction for you too.
All right, you guys hear it here, folks. I think in the next interview is going to be Dan. She just named it for us.
There you go.
Next interview.
When your schedules collide, by all means.
Well, thank you so much. The honor's mine. Of course, you know, you've been, your voice was in my childhood.
It's awesome.
I mean, it's awesome that I'm here now. I never thought that I'd be here in 2020 interviewing the voice of Tess. Hopefully, we get to interview more of the cast members. I know that maybe, and this is another announcement, you guys, that maybe we'll be interviewing Ashlyn later on this year in person at Ontario, California for a comic book convention that's coming up. So keep your eyes out for more news, more announcements on our website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll be announcing it once that has been confirmed. So hopefully that works out as well.
Very cool. Congratulations.
With that being said, did you ever work with Susan together, or just that same thing where you guys were separate?
Nope, same thing, all separate.
Okay. Oh, that's well.
Would have been great. I would have loved to have met Max Casella. Dan, you know.
I know that would have been
work with
great. You and Max just going at it. I mean, you just hit the record button. And
Going
you guys,
at it?
you know what I mean. Just going line by line by line. That would have been
that would have been so fun. I would
so
have
many
loved that.
good lines would come out of that. You know, so many outtakes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would have been hysterical. Because he is funny as heck. I mean, he is just such a comedian and a brilliant actor in his own right. And so that would have been so fun to work with him. But yeah, my husband did he did a reasonable facsimile, so he tried.
That ending scene in Jak III, I believe, the Daxter, the hot coffee scene.
Is that
The
hot coffee scene?
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware, but hot coffee is a term for sexual scenes in a video game or a movie. In this case, Jak and Daxter, they call it hot coffee because he's actually holding some kind of tea or hot coffee in his in a mug, which is a reference to hot coffee in it itself. But of course, you know, it's a children's video game, so they can't.
I do remember it. I do remember Dan putting that in.
Right? Yeah, it was like a little cameo thing right after the ending credits.
You're such an animal. Oh, Daxter, you're amazing.
What?
And I think you said that line. Oh, Daxter, you're. What was that line again?
Daxter, you're amazing.
There you go. And then I think Daxter just goes.
Yeah, I do remember Dan explaining the hot coffee thing and him actually having him hold like hot coffee. That sounds like Dan's kind of humor.
Another gag. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Again, subscribe to the Kitsune Network well you don't miss any more awesome interviews coming your way. And Tess, would you like to say anything else to our audience?
No, thank you again so much for having me on, and I really appreciate it, and it was absolutely a joy talking with you, and again, I just think what you're doing is awesome, so keep it up, and I hope you get Ashlyn, and let her know where her name comes from.
Will do. I will make note of that.
But yeah, anybody who has real, like, non-Jak and Daxter related issues with mental health is welcome to look me up or South Coast Psychiatry, and we would be more than happy to help.
And your clinic is called?
Oh, it's South Coast Psychiatry. We're in Orange County, right next to South Coast Plaza, so a little retail therapy, a little psychotherapy. But it's www.southcoastpsychiatry.com, so the only trick there is learning how to spell psychiatry. But yeah, definitely turn into the Kitsune Network as well, which I wasn't aware of until I got your request, and I think I've actually been looking at it, and you guys do amazing work. So
thank you.
Yeah. Seriously, you're awesome, and I've been asking, and a lot of people are aware of you, and I will help spread the news about you guys, because you do great work.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Please share the interview on social media, on all the medias.
Will do. We'll absolutely do.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching this exclusive interview. But before we go, we do have a very special announcement. Subscribe and share this interview for your chance to win an autographed print signed by the lovable Otzelette Tess. You can share the interview on any social media platform using the hashtag Tess and Daxter SPINOFF. Don't forget to use hashtag TKN to increase your chances of winning. Tess, do you have anything else to say to our audience?
Both myself as Tess and my husband, who was the creative director for the Jak and Daxter series, would be happy to sign for anybody who has subscribed and is the lucky winner from the Kitsune Network. And Kitsune, you're amazing.
Thank you. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.